In March 2000, Charlie Kray died in prison.
Charlie Kray, the elder brother of the gangster twins Reggie and Ronnie, is being questioned by police. Detectives are investigating an £80 million cocaine smuggling ring. He was one of 3 men arrested during raids in London and Essex, which were part of a long-running investigation. Terry Lloyd reports.
Charlie Kray, pictured here in the back streets of London, was arrested overnight by undercover detectives investigating an alleged £80 million cocaine smuggling ring. He was taken to Ilford Police Station in Essex to be questioned by officers involved in Operation Crackdown, launched 3 months ago in an attempt to stem the flow of drugs around the country. Kray, seen here far left at the funeral of younger brother Ronnie, one of the notorious Kray twins, was watching television in a house in Crystal Palace when he was arrested over an alleged conspiracy to supply 520 kilograms of cocaine. But Frankie Fraser, a family friend, insisted Kray was innocent.
I think he's done nothing wrong at all. I think it's just his name, somehow or other, and you have to expect this when you have a name like that. The Krays, or my name, or the Richardsons. This is par for the course. But personally, I don't think he's done anything wrong at all. I'd bet money on it.
A woman friend who was with Kray when he was arrested travelled to Ilford to be with him. She said she expected him to be released later today. 2 other men, arrested at a service station on the A13 in Essex, where £63,000 worth of cocaine was seized by detectives, are also being questioned. Terry Lloyd, ITN, Essex.
Today's the day for that annual event, the new car registration.
An alleged £80 million cocaine smuggling ring. He was one of 3 men arrested during raids in 2 separate addresses in South East after what's described as a long-running operation by drugs officers.
Raids on flats in London continued as part of Operation Crackdown, designed to expand the fight against drug dealers.
We've got some results. This is a simple lock knife which you'd use to cut up. As you can see, it's burnt on the edge, resinous substance, usually cannabis resin. But he's got tools scattered about. Here we are, it's nearly 7 o'clock in the morning, in an event of police going. Fortunately, on this occasion, he was fast asleep in bed when we came in.
But it wasn't like that last time you came, was it?
No, he came at me with a machete.
The raid, which netted a member of one of Britain's most notorious underworld families, was part of the same operation, although police wouldn't confirm Charlie Kray as a suspect. But his girlfriend arrived at Ilford Police Station today, accompanied by a minder. She refused to talk to reporters.
There is a large seizure on another area of some significant value. I'm told £80 million worth of cocaine has been seized and 3 people are in custody for that offence.
As Operation Crackdown continued, detectives found drugs, weapons and cash and made dozens of arrests. Today's raids were not aimed at catching major criminals. They were merely an indication of the police force's determination to stamp out drug dealing on the streets. Ross Appleyard, Sky News, South East London.
Britain's top policemen have urged the Home Secretary to override Tory MPs and ban private ownership of handguns. The call has come from the influential police...
faces charges relating to the supply of cocaine and ecstasy worth £78 million. He'll appear before magistrates later this morning. Former SS Captain Eric Priebke has been rearrested hours after being freed by a military court on war.
Gangster twins Ronnie and Reggie will appear in court this morning, charged with conspiring to supply cocaine valued at £78 million. Charlie Kray was one of 3 men charged following police raids on 2 homes in southeast England.
Movements on the markets now with Anna Jones.
He was arrested in connection with what police describe as a long-running operation.
70-year-old Charlie Kray was arrested in connection with Operation Crackdown, a series of raids designed to expand the fight against drugs. Detectives picked up dozens of alleged drug dealers as part of the operation, and also weapons and cash. Along with 2 other men, Mr. Kray is charged with supplying cocaine worth £300,000 and conspiring to supply another £78 million worth. He's also accused of conspiring to supply 1,000 ecstasy tablets valued at £20,000. Mr. Kray, a member of one of the world's most notorious crime families, was visited at Ilford Police Station by his girlfriend, who brought him a change of clothing. She refused to talk to waiting reporters. Mr. Kray and his two co-accused are due to appear before Redbridge Magistrates Court in East London this morning. David Hurst, Sky News.
The former SS captain Eric Priebke has been rearrested in Italy only hours after a military court decision to allow him to go free.
Of gangster twins Reggie and Ronnie has been charged with conspiring to supply millions of pounds worth of drugs. The pensioner faces charges relating to the supply of cocaine and ecstasy worth £78 million. He'll appear before magistrates later this morning. A 5-year-old liver...
Year-old brother of the gangster twins Ronnie and Reggie will appear in court this morning, charged with conspiring to supply cocaine valued at £78 million. Charlie Kray was one of 3 men charged following police raids on 2 homes in southeast England.
And the time, 19 minutes past 8. Killers Reggie and Ronnie Kray is due in court this morning. Charlie Kray, who's 70, is accused of conspiring to supply drugs. He was arrested during a series of raids in the southeast. Sneezing could have been fatal for a Denver car worker.
He's remanded on drugs charges.
And since Reggie and Ronnie Kray has been remanded in custody for 6 days, accused of plotting to supply almost £80 million worth of cocaine. Charlie Kray shared the dock with 2 other men who face similar charges. All 3 were arrested on Wednesday night when police raided 2 separate addresses in southeast England.
A custody van and escort brought Charles Kray and his 2 co-accused from a police station in East London, where they'd been held after being charged late last night. Kray's girlfriend, Judy Stanley, at whose home in South London he was arrested, arrived minutes before the start of the preliminary hearing. The 8 alleged offences listed before Redbridge magistrates include conspiracy to supply cocaine and misuse of a controlled substance. Kray and Field are further alleged to have plotted in the traffic of 1,000 ecstasy tablets, though prosecutor Terry Lavelle said Kray himself was not alleged to have been in possession of any drugs. In their day, the Krays had a reputation for dapperness, and that was something elder brother Charlie maintained here today. He stood in the dock wearing a charcoal grey double-breasted suit with a crisp white shirt and a white handkerchief folded neatly in the breast pocket. Throughout the half-hour hearing, he remained silent, looking straight ahead or at his girlfriend, who sat in the packed public benches. As he was led away to the cells, he blew her a kiss. Refusing bail, the magistrates remanded all 3 in custody for 6 days. Reporting restrictions were not lifted. Jeff Mead, Sky News, East London.
And our reporter Jeff Mead, who is actually in court, joins us right now live from East London. Jeff, how did Charlie Kray actually appear? What was his demeanour whilst in court?
Lisa, it was remarkable. He was led into the court. They had to wait in the cells, I must say, for some half an hour while the magistrates dealt with the normal Friday morning catalogue here at Redbridge Magistrates of drunkenness, assault and run-of-the-mill violence offences. So it was some time into the session when case number 13 was announced, and into the dock came the 3 men. Charles Kray ahead of them. He was the first in, and he certainly didn't look like a man who had spent a night in police cells. As you heard in that report, he was very crisply turned out. His shirt was neat, it had no creasing in it. His whole demeanour was very relaxed, very composed. He was tanned, he has long collar-length grey hair. Looks every inch a pensioner, which is what he is, who's retired to Spain. And he showed no emotion throughout the prosecution's outlining of the case, which of course for legal reasons cannot yet be reported. And the only time at which his gaze swerved from either the prosecuting solicitor or the chairman of the magistrates was when he glanced at Judy Stanley, his girlfriend, a couple of times. Once just to say hello as when he arrived in court, and as you heard there, to blow her a kiss as he was led away to the cells, where he will remain for another 6 days until police inquiries continue.
Indeed, I was going to say, I mean, you also said in your report the Krays, of course, well known for a pretty notorious past, but also for instilling fierce loyalty. Apart from his girlfriend, were there many other friends or family there to offer support?
I think court number 1 at Redbridge Magistrates can rarely have seen anything such as was witnessed here this morning. It was absolutely packed. In fact, about 15 minutes before the court began at 10 o'clock, police and security officers refused access to anybody else. There simply wasn't room. The benches were packed, obviously with many journalists, also as many members of the public as could squeeze in, because this, is a case which, through no fault of his own, of course, Charles Kray shares a surname with 2 of Britain's most notorious criminals, and there was a great deal of interest. People wanted to come and see what happened and see what Charles Kray himself looked like.
He was, of course, remanded with 2 other men. Was much actually said by the 3 in court?
Not a single word, Lisa. This, remember, is very much the most preliminary hearing of all. They were only charged at 10 o'clock last night at Ilford Police Station. So the police now, basically, this morning's hearing was for the prosecution to outline the case against them to 3 magistrates, and for the magistrates to consider whether what evidence had been gathered so far warranted the men being remanded in custody to allow the police inquiries to continue, or whether the case against them did not hold water on the face of it, and they should be released. The magistrate's decision today was that they should be remanded for another 6 days, and the police inquiries go on.
But there was some confusion over the length of that remand period, is that right?
Indeed. It's somewhat surprising, I think, Lisa, that with a case of so much intense media interest, such a high-profile hearing, that the magistrates slightly got their procedure wrong, because at first, it has to be said, at the accused's own wishes, the request of their 2 solicitors, they were remanded for 28 days. However, after we'd all filed out of the court and begun to send our reports, we were urged back in by the court clerk. The magistrates then reconvened. They called Charles Kray and his co-defendants back into the dock and said that they'd actually exceeded their powers. Under the law, they can't remand people for that length of time. They can only remand for a maximum of 7 days. That's why it was a 6-day committal, and we'll all be back here next Thursday.
All right, Jeff, for now, thanks very much indeed.
Well, now, if you're off to the seaside for your holiday...
The entire British team.
Charlie Kray, the older brother of gangster twins Reggie and Ronnie, faced an East London court this morning charged in connection with an alleged £80 million cocaine smuggling ring. The 70-year-old was remanded with 2 other men to appear again in a week. All 3 were arrested on Wednesday after police raids in London and Essex. ITN's Terry Lloyd was in court.
70-year-old Charlie Kray, who was arrested by undercover detectives on Wednesday, was driven to court with 2 other prisoners to face drugs conspiracy charges allegedly involving £78 million worth of cocaine. Extra police were on duty at Redbridge Magistrates Court for the appearance of Kray, the elder brother of twins Reggie and Ronnie. A female friend who was watching television with Kray when he was arrested travelled from Crystal Palace to be close to him. Kray, along with builder Ronald Field and electrician Robert Gould, was charged with supplying 2 kilos of cocaine worth £300,000 and conspiracy to supply 520 kilos of the drug. Kray and Field were also accused of supplying 1,000 ecstasy tablets. There was no application for bail, and all 3 were initially remanded in custody for 28 days. For most of the 25-minute hearing, Kray stared intently at the prosecutor and the magistrates. As he was led back down to the cells, he turned and winked to friends at the back of the courtroom. But minutes later, the magistrates realised they'd exceeded their powers of remand.
Their power initially is only for 8 clear days. So the 3 defendants will be brought back into court, and an application will be made to remand into custody for 7 days.
Friends and solicitors were called back into court as Kray and his co-defendants were remanded in custody until August the 8th.